Well, good morning, Southern Oregon. Alice Lema here with Pete Belcastro. We're both real estate brokers here at John L. Scott, Southern Oregon, and welcome to the Real Estate Show. We have an amazing show today. We're so lucky that we're going to have Mayor Chris Luz from the city of Phoenix talking to us shortly. And in the meantime, I want to check in with you, Pete. How are things going with you since you lost your home in Phoenix?
Well, it's been 7 weeks now. I think people tell me you go through all sorts of emotions of it. The shock is over, and now the reality kind of sets in. And Alice, it's pretty tough. The toughest part, I think, to me, is when you drive through it all the time. You're always reminded of it, and I hear a lot of people say that. And I've met some people who won't even drive through it. They've done it one time. They don't even want to go back. And things like that. It brings up a lot of emotions, and what you do, you feel like a victim each time you drive through it, is what I felt. But today, what I'm looking forward to is really Chris Luz. I don't think he ever would have expected what happened to his city in Phoenix. It was literally so much of it just wiped out. And so we're going to hear from him about what the plans are today, what's happening there with the manufactured home parks, the apartments, the housing, the commercial that's all been destroyed. And how are they going to redo it? So we've been talking about that on our show over the weeks here. And we're going to hear from the top guy about what he thinks his city, how it can survive and rebuild and move on, because it's pretty devastated, as you know.
Well, and it's going to be something that you and I have talked about since the fire started is what are the different municipalities going to do with the zoning, if anything? And are they going to try to make any changes or not? It's going to be really, really interesting to see what Phoenix is talking about.
And we reimagine housing. I mean, that to me is the top story out of this whole thing is if we just come back and do the same thing, build the same stuff, allow the same kind of things to go in the same places, allow Bear Creek to have its thing, it's going to be a whole lot different than it would be for how it may change and what Chris is looking at the city is doing innovatively, creatively to make it easier for people to come back. I think that's the biggest issue Phoenix has is making sure people who've left can come back and want to come back, and they need to make it easy and help them to do that. Or
and
Phoenix
safe.
is going to be very different. Yep, Phoenix will be very, very different than it was.
Yeah. And it all affects real estate here in Southern Oregon, which is why we feel so lucky to have Mayor Chris Luz coming to be interviewed on our show. So we want you to stay tuned. We're going to have a break coming up real quick, but this is Alice Lema and Pete Belcastro for the Real Estate Show. Do not touch that dial. We will be right back. Okay. Right. Yay. Yay. Yeah, I like doing the 3 minutes at the end.
I do too.
Okay. Yeah. Plus, we get the guests kind of cycled through faster.
Yeah, we get them through and out. Yeah. And
so how long was he with us? It's 13, 13, and 9. What does that add up to be?
26, 35.
35 minutes. So when we make the appointments with people, we can say it's only half an hour.
Well, it's 35 minutes. Yeah. Their part. Yeah.
Yeah. So maybe we can get more people to say yes.
Oh.
So, all right. Well, and we've got Danny, I think, for next week. And then okay. Who do you want after that?
Well, I think it's Guy's turn after that.
Okay. All right. I will work on that.
Okay. And I will see you tomorrow morning at 9.
Yep. I will be there. Bell's on.
Okay.
All right.
Okay. I'll see you then. Okay. Bye.
Well, welcome back to the Real Estate Show, folks. I'm Alice Lema here with my cohort, Pete Belcastro. We're both real estate agents at John L. Scott, Southern Oregon, and we're having one of our favorite guests, Chris Luz, the mayor of Phoenix, and we're so excited. And thank you so much, Chris. We know you are super, super busy. We'd love to kind of hear how things are going with the fire effort and your
Pete and Alice, I appreciate the invitation. It's been a rough month for us here in Phoenix and Talon and unincorporated Jackson County or portions of it. We're trying to come back, but right now I think we're still a little bit traumatized, a little bit in shock. And my house it survived. The fence burned, stuff melted on my back porch, but the house itself is intact. But when I look out my window, I see Patty and Jill's house, which is destroyed, and my 24 neighbors their homes are also gone. So that has an impact on you. And throughout the city, if you're just driving around, your neighbor, you're living in Phoenix, you see that it has an impact. It affects your sleep. It affects you psychologically, whether you think it does or not. I think it does. And it's going to take some time to come back. The first stage is happening now as far as the cleanup. We're doing the hazardous waste cleanup, and that's free to the citizens. And we've got hazmat teams on the ground doing that cleanup now. But then the big cleanup is going to be what they call ash and trash. And that could be a number of months away. It's going to take some time. So it's been rough. We're trying to get through that first stage, and there's a lot going on regarding things like transitional housing, city finances, real estate, which is, I know what you guys do, but that's a quick brief synopsis as far as what I'm going through.
Chris, where were you on September the 8th? Were you home, or tell us what you experienced, and what you felt as you saw your city literally just disintegrate before you? What were you doing?
Well, Pete, it was probably around 1:30, 2 o'clock in the afternoon. I was with Chief Derek Boker, the police chief, out on Highway 99 and Oak Street, helping to direct traffic or redirect traffic. And then it got smokier and smokier, and we saw the flames coming up over Blue Heron Park, and it just got pretty hairy at that point. So I left that area, as did everybody else when I was transitioning out of town. And throughout the evening, I was going back and forth from my office on Main Street in Phoenix, which is right across the street from La Tapa Tea, Puck's Donuts.
Right.
I'm right across the street there. I was going from there up to my home on Samuel Lane. Samuel Lane is the last road as you're entering out of Phoenix and going down Cover Road towards Talent. Mm-hmm. So during the evening, I was watering down our parking lot, down at the business, and trying to stop those embers from coming onto our property from La Tapa Tea and Puck's. The wind was just, as everyone knows, was just torrential that night. It was 35, 40 miles an hour. Those embers kept coming across the street. Every hour, I was down at the business, watering the parking lot, watering the gutters, watering the side of the house, side of the business where the yard is, and trying to take care of that. And then going up to my house to see what's going on in my neighborhood. And I was going around the city and taking pictures and videos and updating the council regarding what was going on. And there were some crazy events that happened. You know, I could tell an hour worth of stories, but one story is when I'm coming back from my business, going down Culver Road to the area that's not affected by the fire, my neighborhood, a little bit out of town, there's a storage shed on fire. And it's blazing away. I'm like, whoa, the fire is here. It's not supposed to be here. It's supposed to be downtown along the Greenway. So, you know, the first thing I did, I pulled over. There's no one there. I texted the police chief, let him know, and I guess people knew about it, but there's no fire people to send to it. They were all busy.
Wow.
So I went back to someone's house and grabbed a hose. No water coming out. I'm like, whoa. So, you know, you laugh about it now, but that night it was crazy serious. So the next house over, their gate was locked, and I had to break down the gate. And I've talked to them afterwards, and they're happy I did break down the gate and did what I did. But I broke down the gate, grabbed their hose. Again, no water coming out. So there's no water in the whole system. So I was taking dirt and some water from the back of that house, trying to put the fire out that was hitting their fence. And then slowly but surely, I heard this whoosh, whoosh, and it was sheriff's deputies on the other side dipping whatever they could find as far as a receptacle and dipping into a kiddie pool and throwing water on top of the fire at that shed. Now, guys, if this went up, I believe Jared Court would have gone and the rest of Samuel Lane would have gone. It was just, the wind was blowing in the right direction. So I joined the sheriff's deputies, and we're all just dipping water or getting water out of that kiddie pool, throwing it on top of that shed and putting that fire out. But that was a crazy, crazy scene in the middle of even a crazier scene amongst all the fires.
Wow.
You know, I've got stories like that I could go on for an hour. It was just a bizarre, weird night.
Has water, power, sewer been restored to all the affected areas, or where does that stand today,
Well,
Chris?
yes and no. You know, the power around certain areas, like the Barnum subdivision, Samuel Lane, and certain areas that are burned down to the ground, the power is not restored. So Pacific Power needs to go in and take care of rebuilding the power structure. It's underground, but the generators, what they call the transformers, are melted. So they still need to bring the power in. The water's been shut off to the really affected areas. Same with gas. So there is no gas, water, and power if you see a neighborhood that's completely burned down to the ground. The rest of the city where you have a home that's occupied, all the utilities are up and running, Pete.
Okay.
Yeah.
Alice, where you at?
Well, it has been such a traumatic event, and it's still hard for people, like you say, to drive through. And as real estate agents, we're going in and out of there, trying to help people figure out if they want to move back or not. And we have a lot of questions from people about safety and cleanup and when they'll be able to sell their lots again and if they should rebuild. And so we kind of wanted to check in with you as the mayor of Phoenix, kind of what your thoughts were on that.
Okay. And, you know, I don't have all the answers regarding what's happening with FEMA and with the other agencies, but what I do know is that there are many people that want to come back. They want to rebuild. Some people want to do the cleanup themselves. My neighbor, she's hiring a contractor. I talked to the contractor yesterday along with her, and they're going to clean up and they're going to rebuild and they're going to do the cleanup on their own. Now, what we're suggesting as a city is that you wait and allow the cleanup to be done in a consolidated fashion and allow FEMA to do what they need to do regarding the cleanup and do it all at once, all together, so you don't have one home and that's all cleaned up in a sea of non-clean homes, and therefore the possibility of reinfecting the soil might happen.
Oh, that's a good point. That's a very good point. A lot of it is a private
decision, but we're hoping that people will wait and do the consolidated cleanup, but it could be a couple of months away, which is a sticking point. People want to rebuild ASAP.
Chris, and, where are they taking the debris? Say, I know that some people are doing it ahead of FEMA, doing it themselves, as you say, privately. Where are they taking the debris, and is there any kind of thing? I mean, I can just see clouds of dust, coming area. So where are they taking the debris right now? Do you know?
So Rogue Recycling worked with something similar to this with the weed fire, and at the Dry Creek Landfill is where we're taking, where everyone's going to take their debris. It's about a 40-minute drive off 140. It's about a 2-hour round trip. So you fill up the truck, you head out to Dry Creek, you weigh the truck, you dump your debris, you weigh it again, or you weigh the truck again, and you go on your way. It's about a 2-hour round trip. So in an 8-hour day, we're thinking you get four trips per truck.
So if you're
it's
lucky,
going to take a heck of a lot of trucks, and we're talking hundreds of trucks to do the cleanup.
And all of us going to see, Alice, we were talking about that. What happens is, we did a show with Brad Bennington recently, Chris, and he said there were like, I forget how many thousands of cubic yards of waste that are out there. And where do you take it? So the Dry Creek Landfill is the place that is going to accept the materials, all of the material. I mean, the whole show, everything coming to it.
The metal will go to recycling. So there's certain steel recyclers that want the metal, and the metal will go there. The rest of the debris, almost the rest of it, will go to the Dry Creek, but there's some cleanup being done now. So the hazardous waste, the propane tanks, the paint cans, the car batteries, they're going to be going to a separate site, and it's going to be the Cascade, the Boise Cascade field or operation in Central Point is where that waste is going to go, and it'll be disposed of properly.
Okay, cool.
But virtually everything, that the steel will go to the steel recyclers, and what they call trash. There's ash and there's trash. The ash will go to the landfill.
Okay.
So are they treating any of this?
I don't know if they're treating it, Alice, but I know they're testing it first. So you got to get tested first, and it's put in certain piles, and it will be brought to Dry Creek. And I'm not sure exactly what happens to the debris once it gets to Dry Creek. I really don't know, but it's going to Dry Creek to be disposed of properly.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
There's so many people that were displaced, in your town. And a lot of us who lived in manufactured homes, like I lived in Bear Lake Estates, and of course it's totally wiped out. There's nothing left. What have you heard from people, Chris? I mean, I've talked to my neighbors, and there's 200 homes, their families, people they've scattered. The Coleman Creek Park, Medford Estates. I mean, God, we can just go on and on about what's happened to Phoenix. And what are you hearing? Do people want to come back? Are they scattered? Are they afraid? Or tell me what you're hearing from residents who used to live there.
Yeah, you're right, Pete. They are scattered around. Some are staying in hotel rooms. We met with a large group on Friday, and the Red Cross told us that there's 460 rooms still being rented by the Red Cross to house people.
Wow.
There's another 100 rooms being rented by somebody else. So many,
Wow.
many people are in the hotel rooms, a lot staying with relatives and friends.
Right.
As far as coming back, some people don't want to come back. Some people feel they're too traumatized to come back to Bear Lake Estates.
Yeah.
Some are too traumatized to come back to Creekside. So some are, I think, are never going to come back. Unfortunately, others want to come back and join their neighbors and live the lifestyle they were living before.
Yeah. Well, I know we have a break coming up, and when we come back, I really want to talk to you about it's something that Alice and I have been talking about a lot, is how is Phoenix and Talent going to reimagine housing now? You have a great opportunity that doesn't come along very often out of a tragedy to reimagine what we have. And also about Bear Creek. And I know they've reseeded a lot of that, and we don't want to have tremendous undergrowth come up again that's really fueled that fire. So when we come back, I really want to hear your thoughts about how can we reimagine Phoenix as a bedroom community with living people who live in there. How can we how can we get this better instead of living in places that just are not good for housing, for people, for communities? And so I know what you're hearing, what you're seeing, and how do you think Phoenix should be imagined when it returns? And I think it's a great opportunity that you may never have again.
Sounds good, Pete. Love to do that after the break with you.
Okay, we'll do it. Alice,
so, yep, we're getting ready to go to have a word from one of our adorable sponsors, which we appreciate very much. It allows us to do the show every week. Pete and I will be right back. We're having a wonderful interview with Mayor Chris Luz. Chris Luz. Sorry about that.
That's all right.
Rhymes with Buzz. Chris Luz, the mayor of Phoenix, and we're talking about real estate, Southern Oregon, the aftermath of the fires, and what's coming next. So do not touch that dial. We're right back with Mayor Chris. Well, welcome back, real estate fans. I'm Alice Lema, broker John L. Scott here in Southern Oregon. Pete Belcastro and I, you're joining us on the weekly radio show, and we're so lucky today to have Mayor Chris Luz, the mayor of Phoenix, chatting with us about all things real estate in Southern Oregon, the after effects of the fire, and what happens next. Thank you so much, Mayor Chris.
You're very welcome, Alice.
Yeah, this is wonderful. So right before we went to the break, Pete was getting ready to talk to you about what happens to basically it was kind of a zoning question. Like, what is Phoenix going to do? It's an opportunity we rarely get as a municipality. So any discussion on that yet?
There is, but I got to say first and foremost that a lot of the rebuilding will be done in what I call organic fashion. So people that want to rebuild their home are going to be rebuilding their home. So whether it be the Samuel Lane Loop, whether it be the Barnum subdivision or Place over in Talent, the housing that was there, the single family stick housing is going to still be there. It's not going to change much. There'll be newer buildings, maybe a little bit different type of structure, but for the most part, for single family stick built home neighborhoods, it's going to be the same thing, just newer.
So none of that single family zoning is changing to your knowledge?
That's correct. But we are going to make some changes in things like ADUs. So those little houses, mother-in-law homes that you might see on a property. Currently, there is a 800-foot minimum, and it can only be half of what your current structure square footage is. So if you have a 1,600 square foot home and you want to build a ADU, it has to be 800 feet. That matches well. But if you have a 1,200 square foot home, and you want to build a 800 square foot ADU, you can't do it because it has to be half of your square footage, which is 600 square feet, which eliminates your ability to do that. So we're going to change the code. That's go through the planning commission. So even if you have a 1,200 square foot home or a 1,000 square foot home, hopefully we'll be able to build an 800 square foot ADU. Okay,
yay!
That's number one.
Yay for you! That's wonderful.
Number two, we're going to hopefully make some changes with allowing housing in certain commercial areas. So right now, commercial areas allow you to do commercial businesses. So we're going to try to make some changes to allow the building of living structures within a commercial zone area.
So we call that in real estate, we call that mixed use.
Okay, great. Yeah. So currently in our city center area, it is a true mixed use zone. You have to have some commercial, and if you want to build housing, it's going to be commercial and housing. So it has to be a footprint with the commercial and residential. So those are two changes that we're thinking about making.
What are you going to do, Chris, regarding systems development charges on, say people who've had their homes destroyed? You're going to rebuild in this place. Do you charge the systems development? Do you let those go? Or tell me what you're thinking or how the city's going to handle that? Because that adds up generally a lot of money to the.
Sure.
To the
Yeah. Well, Pete, if it's the exact same use, you're not going to get charged additional SDCs. So if you're going to rebuild your home, like Jill and Patty, my next door neighbor, they're going to rebuild. They're not going to be charged additional SDCs because they have the exact same usage, the same footprint, the same home, the same fees. Well, the fees won't apply as far as SDCs go. Okay? So there won't be SDCs if you're doing the exact same thing. Of course, if you're changing things, there may be SDCs. And within our city, like a lot of other cities around, there's overlapping SDCs. So it's not just Phoenix SDCs. Metro Water Commission charges SDCs that are applied to our citizens. Sure. Same with Rogue Valley Sewer Services. They apply SDCs. So it's not just Phoenix and SDCs, but if you're doing the exact same thing, the same type of footprint, same usage, no additional SDCs.
Okay. Then the manufactured home parks, because Phoenix, a lot of them. I lived in Bear Lake Estates, Medford Estate. There's tons of them there that were destroyed. Are they going to, from what you're hearing from the owners, and a lot of these are corporate-owned places, not locally owned, which is a whole other story. Okay, but do you see them coming back in the same way, the same thing? It's like they're just going to come back and just basically newer, as you say, just newer units. Is that what you're seeing and hearing?
Yeah, good question, Pete. Within the city of Phoenix, believe it or not, there's only 3 mobile home parks that burned or were destroyed. There are mobile home parks near Phoenix that looks like they're in Phoenix, but they're actually unincorporated Jackson County. Yes. So between Jack in the Box and the old Umpqua Bank, which is destroyed now, those 2 mobile home parks and Coleman Creek Estates are unincorporated Jackson County. They're not in the city of Phoenix. But the 3 that are in the city of Phoenix, Bear Lake Estates, where your home was, and Creekside and Greenway Village, they're all committed to rebuilding. And Creekside is cleaning up on their own. They're doing it now, and they're family run. Same with Greenway Village. They're family run, and they're committed to operating again. Any day without pad revenue for mobile home park is a bad day. So they want the pad revenue as soon as possible, and they're very anxious to clean up and get residents back in there and start operating as a mobile home park.
And I hope that hope they do not charge exorbitant fees to these people to come back. And I hope they're going to make an effort to recruit people back. Let me ask you one more housing question. And this is regarding the Creek area. And look, we know that there's a large Hispanic community and migrant families who come through and live in Phoenix and Talent and in all places there. Many of them lived, in Coleman Creek and in old abandoned RV park, abandoned RVs, and et cetera. Our Ashland Rotary Club has built over 500 2-bedroom, 1-bath homes in Guanajuato, Mexico, in a project with the city and state there. And I'm just trying, instead of coming back in a place like that where it's not very good housing anyway to start, can we rethink ourselves into these small, tiny homes and these developments around Phoenix, which can house large numbers of, minority communities or people who are modest means, who have no other place to go. In Phoenix, the perfect place to do this or try something different than just what we've done in the past. And I'm just hoping that you'll be able to do something like that, and we can accommodate our Hispanic community much more than we have.
Yeah, and Pete, I get your question, and you're absolutely right. The people that took the biggest hit were the poorest of the poor, the migrant workers, the people that pay $5,000, $10,000 for a mobile home, and that's where they live with their family, sometimes 2 families in 1 mobile home. They got socked. I mean, they walked out of the area with a shirt on the back, maybe a little bit of money in the wallet. They didn't have insurance in a lot of cases because those mobile homes were not insurable to begin with because of the age of the mobile home. They're depreciated. The wiring in some of those homes made it uninsurable. So they literally walked out with very little and a little bit of money, shirt in the back, as I always say, and a little bit of money in the wallet, and that's what they have. And they're in dire straits. Now, when it comes to the mobile home parks outside of Phoenix, we don't have a lot to say. I mean, when it comes to unincorporated Jackson County, which has the majority of the mobile home parks, the people that own those mobile home parks are going to decide as to how they want to rebuild. I know they want to do mobile home parks again, but they're the ones that are going to have to decide what they're going to do with their mobile home parks, what they're going to charge. Unfortunately, we only have 3 in Phoenix, which we have any control over, and they're all going to rebuild. How much are they going to charge? I don't know. It's going to be market rate. I'd love to see them, come out with some good deals for people. But, outside of Phoenix, the mayor, the planning commission doesn't have a lot to do with it.
But you have land.
Sorry.
I was saying you have land in Phoenix, and this is a great chance to do something different. And I just can't think of when you lose 3,300 homes in an area that you've got to come back and do the same thing again. Just doesn't seem to make a lot of sense. And here's a chance really to do something. Small homes. We've talked about tiny homes, small homes, all this kind of thing. And that would be a great start, because I think it would solve a whole lot of housing problems and issues, especially, as you say, with the poorest of the poor who need it more than anybody else.
Correct. And when I talk to people that want to rebuild, I'm talking housing.
Right.
And it may not be tiny homes, but we want fairly affordable housing here in Phoenix. It's not going to be, a single family stick built home is much more expensive than a smaller townhome. So I'm talking real estate with people here in the city. I just had a meeting not more than 30 minutes ago, just wrapped up, with a gentleman who owned property in the commercial zone. And I talked to him about changing the zoning laws so he can build homes on his property. And we're talking small homes that are much more affordable than a single family stick built home over in Medford or Talon or wherever it is. So affordable. Good.
That's good to hear that you're thinking that way. And smaller homes, we don't have to. It would be the horrible thing if all of a sudden Phoenix started getting $500,000-$600,000 homes in it, and people are shoved out. And so it's good to hear that you're that you're thinking that way. I like that, and I think we can really reimagine it into a great way. I know we got a break coming up, and I know your city is whacked by property taxes. I mean, you just got to be wiped out. I mean, just how in the world you're going to even deal with that? It's another issue. You think about all the things that are out there that you're facing. Wow, a lot of them.
Yeah, and Pete, I was a couple arms length away from the governor at a meeting recently, and I told the governor, we're not going to be able to pay our bills in 9 months. And I looked her right in the eye and said, I'm serious. We're not going to be able to issue a paycheck to our employees in 9 months or a year because of the devastating effects upon our budget that this disaster has. It's not just real estate taxes. We're going to get hard with real estate taxes. There's also things like franchise fees. So every time someone pays an electric bill or a phone bill or an Avista bill or a Spectrum internet bill, there's a small bit that is the franchise fees that we collect, and there are less bills going out, less franchise fees coming in. We had one hotel that was paying taxes, not a lot of taxes, but we had one hotel here in the city that burned. So we're going to lose some of that tax. Our urban renewal district is our downtown, and the urban renewal district gets money from real estate taxes, and that pays for the outstanding bonds that we have to pay off. The Civic Center room in right now, that was paid for by the Urban Renewal Association or Urban Renewal. With all the real estate, not all, but a lot of it gone, we're going to be in a pickle as far as paying for the bonds. So you're right, Pete. It's really going to affect our finances. And I told the governor we need stopgap financing. It'll be done legislatively. It'll be some way, but we can't afford our bills. Fortunately, last Monday, we did get notification that we did qualify for a city disaster assistance grant. It's $5 million. And for us, it's a lot of money. So it's a $5 million grant. And typically those grants over time are forgivable. So that's going to help us out. But we're putting all our financial picture together, the loss in revenue, the uptick in cost, and then we're going to plead our case to the state and see what we can do with stopgap financing. It's a tough situation.
Mayor Chris, Mayor Chris, I'm curious, when you were speaking to Governor Brown about the situation and the future of Phoenix, was she sympathetic? Did she give you any inclination about what she might be willing to talk about?
She's been You know, sometimes we don't all agree philosophically with a particular party, but the parties are coming together, whether it be a Republican, Democrat, Governor Walden's office, Congressman Walden's been working hand in glove with us. Same with Merkley, Wyden, the FEMA director, DeFazio was down here recently, and we all met and had a big powwow about what we need as a region without politics involved. And the governor has been sympathetic. I do get I've talked to her a number of times, one-on-one, and she does listen. Same with Walden, Wyden, and the rest of our national delegation. So we're all pooling resources, trying to make things happen for Phoenix, for Talon, for the rest of the region. And I've been pleased at the fact that they're all coming together to try to make things happen. A little too slow for my taste, but things are happening.
Well, that's awesome. We've got a break coming up right now. Okay. So hold that thought and do not touch that dial. Mayor Chris Luz is our guest today. Pete Belcastro, Alice Lema. We'll be right back with the radio show. Well, welcome back to the Real Estate Show, folks. I'm Alice Lema here with Pete Belcastro. We're both brokers at John L. Scott, Southern Oregon. And we have a fascinating interview going right now with Mayor Chris Luz, the city of Phoenix. And he's just a wealth of information. We're getting to hear some real-time, just immediate news that is not generally available. And one of the questions that Pete had was right before the break.
Well, I was just thinking, well, first of all, I really thank you, Chris, for joining us today. And I think our listeners and viewers have learned a lot about what's going on. And I'm really encouraged by listening to what you said. So that's really a good thing. My question, though, did you ever think that you'd be facing this kind of thing when you were elected mayor, or even like 2 months ago? Did anything ever cross your mind? I mean, we always talk about emergencies and planning and stuff, but did it ever really hit you that this could happen?
No, the big thing on my mind regarding disasters was an earthquake, because we're on a certain fault here. That's crossed my mind. But the type of destruction that we faced, the fire storm that ripped through our communities, never thought about that in a million years. Typically, if we have one fire over a weekend in the Rogue Valley, it hits newspapers, it's big news. If you had 2 houses burned down in one weekend, that's really big news. Wow, what's going on? You never see 3 homes being burned in 1 week. Never mind 2,600 residential units being burned in one day. Of course, you don't envision that. And you ask yourself, what can you do differently? What could you have done to prevent it? I don't think we could have done anything to prevent it. It was 35, 40 mile an hour winds. Preventing it, I don't think was possible. When you look back, the early warning system has to be reevaluated. And
we received Chris, I will just tell you, this is a big issue around the county. We as residents of Phoenix received no warning. We were just told all of a sudden, now you're out, you're gone, you got to go. Sirens and loudspeakers and everything else. So there was no advance warning, and I've heard all sorts of stories about how counties, emergency management, whatever. It's a whole different story, but it doesn't really matter. My other question for you is regarding the Bear Creek Greenway, because it comes right from Phoenix. I lived right on it, so I know that.
You sure do.
Over the years, it became so, undergrowth was so great with blackberry briars, etc. The fuels were so hot and so great. Is there a discussion? Have you talked with anybody from the Greenway about what its future is going to be in terms of the undergrowth and all around the creek? Because it cannot be allowed to ever get that way again. It just fueled the fire even more intensely than it should have.
Yeah, and Pete, that'll be part of an after disaster action report that has to come out. There is a joint powers agreement between all the cities along the Greenway. It's managed by Jackson County, and they take care of the maintenance. We all pay into it. So you're absolutely right. It has to be reassessed. For a while, when you go down the Greenway now, everything's being cut down. All the trees are being cut down because they're burned. Even the smaller trees are burned. So there's not going to be hardly any growth for quite a few years. But you're right. Over the long term, you got to reassess the Greenway and reassess how you're going to take care of the undergrowth. And also you got to look at the cause of fires. There's causes of fires. People live on the Greenway. They have campsites, and sometimes those items or those areas, that situation causes fires also. Right. So it's the undergrowth, and it's also people living there and causing a man-made fire. Maybe not intentionally, but things happen when you have a fireplace going or a stove or a cigarette down on the Greenway, you're living there. So I don't think people should be living there. It's just too darn dangerous.
Well, I lived there. I lived on Bear Creek, and I
know you do.
Back the undergrowth. You look at it, I mean, you look. God, this thing could burn like a mother if it ever caught fire. And once it did, with the wind, you saw what happened. And the Greenway is part of the reason it got so strong and was so destructive was the growth of the Greenway on the undergrowth. So, man, there's so many things here that
Pete, in your area, you have one road in, one road out, right?
Yeah.
And it's 211 mobile homes over in Bear Lake Estates. So, I've thought about that before. I've contacted the railroad and had them do like a 60-foot path of fire break along the railroad to stop, or hopefully stop, flames from coming into our neighborhoods. Mm-hmm. The same thing at Bear Lake Estates. We've contacted people that have land around it to cut and mow their lawns and keep the weeds down. Mm-hmm. But one road in, one road out, I think needs to be reassessed. And there's going to be some way to put a second road in there so you can get out in case of an emergency.
My biggest fear was being caught in there when we were told to go and you saw the flames. My biggest you go because I was feared that it was coming straight down the Greenway. It's going to block that road and I'm going to get stuck and I'm going to die. And that's exactly what, and that's a fear.
Same thing with a flood or a fire.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So quite a bit of that Greenway area and some of the mobile home parks, whether they're in Phoenix or surrounding areas, were in floodplains. Is anybody talking about perhaps not building in the floodplain?
Yeah. Alice, fortunately with our mobile home parks, we're going to be able to build in the same spots that the mobile homes were before. There may have to be some allocation as far as raising the structure up by our code calls for raising it by 1 foot if you're in the floodplain. And there is floodplain, and there's also another part of the flood zone where you get like a river changes course and it comes through. It's not just water coming up, it's the river changing course. And if that happens, if that is projected to happen in case of a flood, then you can't build there. It's called a floodway. The floodplain, if your home is in there or you want to build there, you got to raise it up by 1 foot. And if you do that, then you can rebuild. Unfortunately, in our case, with our 3 mobile home parks, the case is that we should be able to rebuild exactly where the paths were before by raising the appropriate ones up by 1 foot. That's good news for us.
That
There's
is
other ones that are in the
news.
Floodway, which are another problem altogether.
And that happened after the 97 flood, where all the everything built after 97, all were 3 foot up, 3 feet above. So you're absolutely right there. Look, we're almost out of time. I just want one more thing. Have people, what should people do? Have most people you think who've been affected contacted FEMA, this kind of thing? Or what's your advice to those who are maybe still thinking about it? I know we're out of time here. What do you think that is?
Pete, I've heard that about 2,500 homes have contacted FEMA. About 2,600 were displaced. 2,500 have contacted FEMA. So I think virtually everyone that should be contacting FEMA has contacted FEMA, which is great news. Okay. The disasterassistance.gov, if you haven't done so already. But here we have the FEMA people working at our Phoenix Civic Center. Business is slow right now, which is a good sign. That means people have already signed up. They're here to sign people up. There's no one signing up anymore because I think virtually everyone has already signed up, which is great news.
That is great news. Yeah, that's wonderful.
Say that again, Pete.
What do they sign up for when you say that? What do they sign up for?
Yeah, well, they're signing up for assistance in the form of housing. So FEMA will pay for 18 months of housing for people that are displaced. Wow. And they'll help you. Like one of my lead workers, her home burned down at Coleman Creek Estates. We're working today, and she got a call from FEMA regarding them trying to find her a home to live in, 7 people, and they'll help you find a home. They'll help you pay for an apartment, hotel rooms, temporary housing, but eventually we do need what they call interim housing, which could be a trailer, an RV, in some spot that someone can call home for a little while until there's permanent housing in place.
Well, there's so much more we could talk about, but gosh, we're going to be out of time. Alice, gosh, I've learned so much, haven't you, today from having with us? I feel better, Chris, having listened to you than I did when we started our show. I will say that.
Okay, maybe it's a little bit of good news and a sea of bad news right now.
Yep,
Well,
yep.
it's just nice to know, it's just nice to be brought up to date, and you're so on top of it, Mayor Chris. We appreciate you so much. And we'd love to have you back on the real estate show maybe in a few weeks and get another update.
Okay, I enjoyed it. I appreciate the invitation.
Thank you
All
so
right,
much.
thank you. And we'll have a rebroadcast of this show tomorrow at 6 o'clock on Sunday, 6 o'clock. So until then, enjoy the beautiful Southern Oregon lifestyle. This is Alice and Pete and Mayor Chris saying, make it a great weekend. Bye, folks.